On the second day of Lily's hospital stay, complications began. She spiked a fever overnight, 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The nurses called Dr. Kim immediately. Could be a normal post-surgical fever, doctor, Kim said, examining Lily carefully. But given the near rupture of the appendix, I'm concerned about infection. I'm ordering blood cultures and a CT scan to check for abscess formation. Another CT scan, another $3,000 that Olivia didn't have, that David couldn't pay, that would pile on to the already impossible debt. But what choice did they have? Do it, David said again. Those two words becoming his mantra. The CT showed a small abscess, a pocket of infection in Lily's abdomen, not large enough to require surgery, but serious enough to need IV antibiotics and extended hospital stay. She'll need to stay at least 4 more days, Dr. Kim explained. Maybe a week. We need to make sure the antibiotics are working and the abscess is resolving. 4 more days. Maybe a week. David did the math in his head. Probably another $20,000. $30,000. The bill that was already impossible had just become more impossible. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, David walked out to the hospital parking lot. He sat in his beat-up 2003 Honda Civic, the one that needed new brakes, that burned oil, that he couldn't afford to fix, and he broke down completely. He sobbed like he hadn't sobbed since his wife died 3 years ago. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and dark and desperate. His wife had died of breast cancer. They had caught it late because she had been avoiding the doctor. No insurance, no money, no time. By the time the pain was too much to ignore, it had already spread. She had lasted 6 months. The medical bills from her care had bankrupted them. He had lost their house, such as it was. Lost everything. Moved the kids into that apartment, started over with nothing. And now history was repeating itself with his daughter. David thought about just driving away. Just starting the car and driving until he ran out of gas, leaving this nightmare behind. He fantasized about it for a full minute, the freedom of escape, the relief of not having to face another hospital bill, another collection call, another system designed to crush him. But then he thought about Lily's face when she woke up from surgery, about Emma's quiet strength, about little Noah's trust that his papa would fix everything, and he got out of the car and went back inside. Because that's what poverty does, it traps you. It gives you impossible choices and then judges you for making them. It tells you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you can't even afford boots. But you survive anyway, because your kids need you to. The next morning, Olivia showed up with coffee and breakfast sandwiches from McDonald's, all she could afford after the credit card hit from the CT scan. How is she? She asked. Fever's down a little. 100.8 this morning. Antibiotics seem to be helping. That's good. Olivia handed him the coffee. Marcus and I talked last night. We want to help with the bills. Olivia, I know what you're going to say, but we're family. You would do the same for us. I can't let you do that. You've already given so much. David, we don't have much to give. Our savings is gone. But Marcus picked up some extra freelance work. We can probably contribute a few hundred a month toward the bills. It's not much, but it's everything, David said, his voice breaking. You've already saved her life, the CT scan you paid for. If we had waited. If we had tried to figure out the money first. He couldn't finish. They sat in silence for a moment, two people barely hanging on, trying to help each other survive in a system designed to make them fail. I keep thinking about that hospital lobby, Olivia said finally. The marble floors, the chandeliers, the names carved in stone of rich people who donated millions. And I wonder, why is it like this? Why do some people have so much that they can casually write a check for $1 million for a hospital wing, while other people have to choose between their child's life and financial ruin? Because the system is rigged, David said bitterly. It's always been rigged. But it doesn't have to be, does it? Other countries figure it out. Universal health care, single-payer systems. We're the richest country in the world, and we can't figure out how to keep people from going bankrupt when they get sick? We could figure it out, David said. We just don't want to. Because figuring it out would mean rich people like the Coles would have to pay more taxes, would have to sacrifice a little of their wealth, and they would rather hold on to every penny than help people like us. It was true, and they both knew it. But knowing it didn't change anything. Inside the room, Lily stirred and called out weakly, Papa? David was on his feet immediately, the exhaustion and despair pushed aside for now. I'm here, baby. Right here. By day 5 of Lily's hospital stay, the fever had broken and the antibiotics were working. The abscess was shrinking. She was eating again, small amounts, but eating. The worst seemed to be over. Doctor. Kim was cautiously optimistic. If she continues improving, we can discharge her in 2 more days. She'll need oral antibiotics at home and follow-up appointments. But she's healing well. 2 more days, then home. But home to what? The bills were astronomical now, probably over $70,000 with all the complications. The charity care application was still being processed. Medicaid appeal was in limbo. David had missed so much work he was almost certainly fired. On day 6, something unexpected happened. A nurse came into Lily's room, not one of their regular nurses, but an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Mr. Harper, I'm Carol. I've been watching your family since you came in. David tensed. Was this about the bills? Was the hospital going to kick them out? I know you're worried about the costs, Carol said gently. And I can't do anything about that. I'm just a nurse. But I wanted you to know something. Tonight is the Cole Foundation Gala downstairs. Biggest fundraiser of the year. All the wealthy people in Memphis come and write big checks to the hospital. Okay, David said, not sure where this was going. Jefferson Cole will be there. You know who he is? I clean his offices, David said quietly. Or I used to anyway. Probably got fired for missing so much work. Carol's face softened. His company owns a stake in this hospital. His foundation has donated millions. He's a good man. I think, or wants to be. But he doesn't see people like you. He doesn't understand what it's like. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe someone should tell him. Maybe someone should make him see. David stared at her. You want me to crash a fancy gala and confront a billionaire? I'm not telling you to do anything, Carol said carefully. I'm just giving you information. The gala starts at 7 p.m. in the Magnolia Ballroom on the 1st floor. Security will be tight, but... She pulled something from her pocket, a visitor badge. These get you past most security. Just saying. She set the badge on the table and left. David looked at the badge, then at Olivia, who had been listening to the whole exchange. You thinking what I'm thinking? Olivia asked. That this is crazy? Yeah. But also, what do you have to lose? David thought about it. What did he have to lose? His credit was about to be destroyed anyway. His job was probably gone. His daughter was alive but buried under debt that would follow them for years. Maybe it was time to stop accepting the way things were. Maybe it was time to make someone see. Watch Lily, he said to Olivia. I'll be back. He took the badge and headed for the elevator. The Magnolia Ballroom was exactly what David expected. Opulent, excessive, obscene. Crystal chandeliers caught the light from hundreds of candles. Round tables covered in white linens seated Memphis's elite in their tuxedos and evening gowns. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Champagne flowed freely, probably $200 bottles served like water. David, in his worn jeans and wrinkled button-down shirt, stuck out like a wound. Security had glanced at his badge but let him through, just another hospital employee, probably catering staff. He stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching people who existed in a completely different universe. There at the head table, Jefferson Cole. David had seen him before, of course. Seen him stride through the FedEx offices with his entourage, never looking at the janitors who cleaned up after him. Seen his picture in the Memphis Business Journal. Seen his name carved in marble and brass throughout the city. But he had never been this close. Jefferson Cole looked exactly like wealth incarnate. Perfectly tailored tuxedo, expensive watch catching the light, easy smile as he chatted with the mayor and other powerful people. His daughter Harper sat beside him, beautiful in a designer gown that probably cost more than David's rent. A woman took the podium, the hospital's CEO. Thank you all for being here tonight, she said into the microphone. Because of your generosity, Baptist Memorial continues to provide world-class healthcare to our community. This year, we're thrilled to announce that the Cole Foundation has pledged $5 million toward our new pediatric wing. Applause. Enthusiastic applause from people who thought $5 million was generous while simultaneously charging David $70,000 for his daughter's life. Jefferson Cole has been a pillar of this community for decades, the CEO continued. His commitment to healthcare access is unmatched. Jefferson, would you like to say a few words? Jefferson stood, gracious and comfortable in the spotlight. He moved to the podium like he belonged there because he did. This was his world. Thank you, he said, his voice smooth and confident. My family has been part of Memphis for 3 generations, and we believe in giving back to the community that's given us so much. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege. That was when David started walking. He moved through the tables, people turning to stare at this out-of-place man in casual clothes approaching the stage. Security started moving too, but David was faster. Healthcare is a right? David's voice cut through the ballroom. Is that what you really believe, Mr. Cole? Jefferson stopped mid-speech, shocked. The ballroom fell silent. Security reached David, hands on his arms. Sir, you need to leave. My name is David Harper, David said loudly, shaking them off. I work in your building, Mr. Cole. I clean your offices. You've walked past me 100 times and never seen me. And right now, my 11-year-old daughter is 6 floors up in this hospital, recovering from emergency surgery that's going to bankrupt me $70,000. That's what it's costing to save her life. Jefferson stood frozen, uncertain how to respond. You say healthcare is a right? David continued, his voice shaking with emotion. But I had to watch a neighbor, a woman who can barely afford her own rent, pay $3,000 just so my daughter could get a CT scan. I had to sign forms agreeing to debt I'll never be able to pay just so they would operate before her appendix burst. And you know what? This hospital, your hospital, will probably sue me when I can't pay. They'll garnish my wages. They'll destroy my credit. All while you're down here drinking champagne and talking about giving back. The crowd was murmuring now. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked offended that their evening had been interrupted. Harper Cole was staring at David with wide eyes, something like recognition dawning on her face. I'm sorry about your daughter, Jefferson started, his practiced CEO voice engaging. But there are programs, charity care provisions, programs that take months to process while the bills go to collections. David shot back. Charity care that still leaves me owing tens of thousands of dollars. You don't understand because you've never had to live it. You've never had to choose between your child's life and financial survival. You've never had to beg strangers for help because the system is designed to crush people like me. Security was gripping David's arms tighter now, starting to pull him away. You want to give back to the community? David called out as they dragged him toward the exit. Stop profiting from our suffering. Stop letting your hospitals charge amounts that no normal person could ever pay. Stop pretending you care about healthcare access while your companies lobby against universal healthcare. They pushed him out of the ballroom, the doors closing on the shocked silence he had left behind. Carol was waiting in the hallway. That was brave, she said quietly. That was stupid, David corrected, his adrenaline crashing. Nothing's going to change. He'll forget about me in 5 minutes. But David was wrong. Because in the ballroom, Jefferson Cole stood at the podium, staring at the closed doors, his prepared speech forgotten. And his daughter Harper was tugging on his sleeve, her eyes wet with tears. Daddy, she whispered. Is that true? Jefferson looked at his daughter, his beautiful, sheltered daughter who had written college essays about understanding struggle without understanding it at all. It's more complicated than, he started. Is it true? Harper asked again, louder this time. The ballroom was watching them, waiting. And Jefferson Cole, billionaire, philanthropist, pillar of the community, realized he didn't have a good answer. The gala continued, but the energy had shifted. The interruption had cracked something open, let uncomfortable truth seep into the champagne-soaked celebration. Jefferson gave a shortened version of his speech and returned to his table, but he couldn't focus. Harper was quiet beside him, her face troubled. I want to meet her, Harper said suddenly. Who? The man's daughter. The one upstairs. I want to meet her. Harper, that's not appropriate. Why? Because she's poor? Harper's voice had an edge Jefferson had never heard before. You always told me everyone deserves dignity. That our wealth comes with responsibility. Were those just words, Dad? Jefferson felt something uncomfortable stirring in his chest. When had his daughter become so perceptive? After the gala, he said quietly. We'll go see if they're willing to meet with us. An hour later, after the dessert had been served and the checks had been written, Jefferson and Harper took the elevator to the 6th floor. They found room 612. Jefferson knocked softly. Olivia opened the door, her eyes widening in recognition. Mr. Cole? I'm sorry to intrude, Jefferson said, but my daughter and I, we wanted to meet Lily. And her father. If that's acceptable. Olivia looked back at David, who was sitting beside Lily's bed. David's face was hard, suspicious. Let them in, David said finally. Jefferson and Harper entered the small hospital room. It was a stark contrast to the VIP suites. Jefferson was used to standard equipment, worn furniture, the institutional feel of public health care. But what struck Jefferson most was Lily herself. She was small in the hospital bed, pale but alert, her eyes curious as she looked at the strangers in fancy clothes. Hi, Harper said softly, moving closer. I'm Harper. What's your name? Lily, the girl said shyly. That's a beautiful name. I like your bracelet. She pointed to a simple friendship bracelet on Lily's wrist. Miss Olivia made it for me, Lily said. She makes candles and soaps and things. They smell really good. Harper smiled, but her eyes were wet. This girl, this brave, sweet girl, had nearly died. Was drowning in debt for having the misfortune of getting sick while poor. Jefferson stood awkwardly, unsure what to say. He was used to boardrooms, not hospital rooms. Used to balance sheets, not human suffering. Mr. Harper, he began, I want to apologize for my security team's treatment of you downstairs. That's not what you should apologize for, David said bluntly. You're right. Jefferson took a breath. What you said about the system, about the costs. You're not wrong. I know I'm not wrong. I'm living it. How much is the bill? Why? You going to write a check and make yourself feel better? The words stung because they were probably true. Jefferson had been about to offer exactly that, throw money at the problem and walk away feeling charitable. I don't know what I'm going to do, Jefferson admitted, but I think you're right that I don't understand. I've never had to understand. Harper had sat down on the edge of Lily's bed. What do you want to be when you grow up? She asked the younger girl. A teacher, Lily said immediately. Like my mama was before she got sick. She taught second grade and she loved it. That's wonderful. Teachers are so important. What do you want to be? Lily asked. Harper hesitated. I'm applying to colleges now. I was thinking business, maybe, or law. That's good too. You could help people. Do you like school? Harper asked. I love school. I just finished my exams. That's when I got sick. But I think I did really good. Harper smiled, but tears were spilling down her cheeks now. I bet you did amazing. Jefferson watched his daughter connecting with this child, really connecting. Not the performative empathy of volunteer work and charity galas, but genuine human connection, and he felt something breaking open in his chest. Something uncomfortable and necessary. How old was your wife when she passed? He asked David quietly. 32. Breast cancer. We couldn't afford the screening that would have caught it early. By the time she went to the doctor, it had spread. I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you just sorry you have to hear about it? Fair question. Brutal but fair. I think, Jefferson said slowly, I've been sorry in the abstract. Sorry that poverty exists. Sorry that people suffer. But I've never been sorry enough to actually do anything about the systems that cause it. I've profited from those systems while telling myself I'm a good person because I write checks to charity. David looked at him, surprised by the honesty. My wife died 5 years ago, Jefferson continued. Cancer too, but she had the best care money could buy. Every treatment, every specialist, every comfort. And she still died, because sometimes money isn't enough. But at least I never had to choose between her care and losing everything. At least I got to focus on being with her instead of worrying about bills. Must be nice, David said, but some of the edge had softened. It is nice. And it's not fair that it's only nice for people like me. They sat in silence for a moment. Two fathers who had both lost their wives, both loved their children, but who lived in completely different Americas. Mr. Cole? Lily's small voice broke the silence. Are you the man whose name is on the building? Yes, Jefferson said. My grandfather helped build this hospital a long time ago. It's a nice hospital. The doctors are really good. Dr. Kim saved my life. I'm glad, Jefferson said, and meant it. But it costs too much, Lily added matter-of-factly. My papa is really worried about the money. I heard him crying last night when he thought I was sleeping. The words hit Jefferson like a physical blow. This child, this 11-year-old who had just had emergency surgery, was worried about money, was aware of her father's tears. No child should have to carry that burden. Lily, Jefferson said, kneeling beside the bed so he was at her eye level. I'm going to make sure your papa doesn't have to worry about the money anymore. Okay? Really? Her eyes lit up. Really? David started to protest. Mr. Cole, I don't want. I'm not doing this to make myself feel better, Jefferson interrupted. Or maybe I am. I don't know. But mainly I'm doing it because it's right, and because it's a starting point. A starting point for what? Jefferson stood, his mind already racing. For changing things, really changing them. The next morning, Jefferson Cole called an emergency board meeting of Cole Industries. His executives filed in, curious and slightly nervous. Jefferson rarely called emergency meetings. Gentlemen, ladies, Jefferson began. I've been doing some thinking about our healthcare investments. Is there a problem? His CFO asked. Yes, a significant one. We're profiting from human suffering. Confused looks around the table. I met a man last night whose daughter had emergency surgery at Baptist Memorial. The bill is $70,000. He makes $18,000 a year. The math doesn't work. It will never work. And our company profits from that impossibility. Jefferson, his CFO said carefully. We've discussed this. The healthcare system is complex. It's not complex, it's cruel, and we're part of that cruelty. What are you proposing? Several things. First, immediate action. I want us to establish a fund specifically for patients who can't afford their care. Not charity care with Byzantine application processes, but immediate relief. Someone comes into our hospitals who can't pay, the bill gets forgiven. Done. That could cost millions. We have millions, we have billions, and we'll still be profitable even after accounting for this. The shareholders won't like it. I'm the largest shareholder, Jefferson said flatly, and I'm telling you to do it. Silence. Second, long term. I want us to publicly support healthcare reform. Universal coverage, single payer, whatever form it takes. I want Cole Industries to stop lobbying against these measures and start advocating for them. Jefferson, that goes against decades of company policy. Then it's time to change the policy. We can't keep being part of a system that bankrupts people for having the misfortune of getting sick. More silence. His executives exchanged glances. Finally, his COO spoke up. What brought this on? What changed? Jefferson thought about Lily's small voice asking if he was the man whose name was on the building. Thought about Harper's tears. Thought about David Harper's raw pain and justified anger. I got reminded that numbers on a spreadsheet are actually people's lives, he said. And I don't want to be the kind of man who forgets that. That afternoon, Jefferson returned to the hospital with his lawyer. David was in Lily's room, filling out yet another financial form, when they arrived. Mr. Harper, Jefferson said, this is Patricia Chen, my attorney. We have some papers for you to sign. David tensed. What kind of papers? The kind that say your daughter's medical bills are paid in full. All of them. And the kind that say you and your children will have private health insurance through Cole Industries for the next 10 years, regardless of your employment status. David stared at him. Why would you do that? Because I can. And because it's the bare minimum of what's right. I don't want charity. It's not charity, it's justice. You shouldn't have had to choose between your daughter's life and financial ruin in the first place. I can't fix the whole system overnight, but I can fix this. Please let me. David looked at the papers, then at Lily, who was watching with wide, hopeful eyes. Okay, he whispered. Okay. They signed the papers. Patricia confirmed that the hospital had been notified and the bills marked paid in full. When they left, David sat in stunned silence. Did that really just happen? He asked Olivia. I think so, she said, equally shocked. Lily tugged on her father's hand. Papa? Does this mean you don't have to worry anymore? Yeah, baby, David said, his voice breaking. Yeah. That night, for the first time in a week, David Harper slept. But Jefferson Cole didn't sleep. He sat in his study, staring at the Memphis skyline, thinking about David Harper and Lily and the millions of other people trapped in the same impossible situation. He had saved one family. That felt good, but it wasn't enough. Harper found him there at 2 a.m. Can't sleep either? She asked, sitting beside him, thinking about everything that needs to change. It's a lot to change. It is. But we have to try, don't we? What's the point of all this wealth if we don't use it to make things better? End quote. Harper leaned her head on his shoulder. Mom would be proud of you. You think so? I know so. She always said our privilege was only worth something if we used it to help others. I think you're finally understanding what she meant. Jefferson put his arm around his daughter. I've been so focused on building wealth, protecting wealth, growing wealth. I forgot that the purpose of wealth should be enabling human flourishing, not the other way around. So what's next? Next, I talk to every hospital executive I know, every healthcare company CEO, every politician who'll listen. I use every connection, every dollar, every bit of influence to push for systemic change. They'll call you a socialist, a traitor to your class. Let them. I would rather be called names than continue being complicit in a system that crushes people like the Harpers. Harper smiled. When do we start? We? You think I'm going to let you do this alone? I'm coming to every meeting, every negotiation, every fight. This is our family legacy now. Not just buildings with our name on them, but actual change. Jefferson pulled his daughter close, feeling more purpose than he had in years. One family saved. Millions more to go. But every journey starts with a single step. 2 days later, Lily was discharged from the hospital. She came home to find their apartment filled with groceries, real groceries, not just ramen and cheap carbs, and an envelope with a check to cover David's missed wages plus extra. From Mr. Cole, the note said. Because fixing the hospital bill doesn't fix everything else. David cried reading it. That Sunday, the story broke. Billionaire Jefferson Cole calls for healthcare reform, read the headline in the Memphis Commercial Appeal. The article detailed his speech at a hastily called press conference, where he had announced the coal industry's healthcare relief fund and his company's new policy of forgiving medical debt for those who couldn't pay. But more than that, had called out the entire healthcare industry. We've created a system that profits from people's suffering, he had said into the cameras. We charge amounts that no reasonable person could afford and then act surprised when they can't pay. This has to change. And it has to change at the systemic level, which means universal healthcare coverage. Yes, my taxes will go up. Yes, my company will make less profit. And that's fine. Because people shouldn't have to choose between their lives and their financial security. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Conservative pundits called him a socialist. Business journals questioned his mental stability. Other healthcare executives distanced themselves. But there was also support. Stories started flooding social media, thousands of people sharing their own versions of David and Lily's story. Medical bankruptcies, delayed care because of cost, choosing between medications and food, the GoFundMe pages to pay for surgeries. The dam had broken. 1 week after Lily's discharge, David got a call from his supervisor at FedEx headquarters. Mr. Harper, we need to talk about your employment status. David's heart sank. Here it came, the firing he had been expecting. Due to your recent situation and some new company policies, we're offering you a full-time position with benefits. Healthcare, dental, vision, paid sick leave, starting immediately. David nearly dropped the phone. What? Why? Arlau. Let's just say Mr. Cole made some calls and reminded certain people that companies should take care of their workers. You interested? Yes, absolutely. Full-time, benefits, health care for his kids. It felt like a dream. That evening, Olivia came over with Marcus and their kids. They celebrated with pizza and soda, simple, perfect. Things are really changing, Olivia said, watching the kids play. Did you see the news? 3 more CEOs announced medical debt forgiveness programs. 2 senators are proposing new health care bills. One man spoke up, Marcus said. That's all it took. One man refusing to accept how things were. I was so scared that night, David admitted. Crashing that gala, confronting Cole. I thought I was throwing my life away. You were brave, Olivia said. You made him see what he had been ignoring. That takes courage. I was desperate, David corrected. There's a difference. Maybe, Olivia allowed. But sometimes desperation leads to courage, and courage leads to change. Lily, hearing the conversation, came over and climbed into her father's lap carefully, still healing from surgery. Papa, are you glad you talked to Mr. Cole? Yeah, baby, I'm glad. Me too. Harper came to visit me again today. She's really nice. She said we're going to be friends. David smiled. His daughter, his brilliant, resilient daughter, making friends with a billionaire's kid. 6 months ago, he would have thought that impossible. Would have thought their worlds too different to ever intersect. But here they were. Meanwhile, Jefferson Cole was facing the consequences of his choices. The board of coal industries had called a vote of no confidence. Several major shareholders were threatening to sell. Business partners were backing away. "You're destroying the company," his CFO warned. "Everything your grandfather built, everything your father protected, was built on inequality," Jefferson interrupted. "Was protected by exploitation. I don't want that legacy anymore." "So you're willing to sacrifice everything?" Jefferson thought about it. Was he? His wealth would survive even with higher taxes and lower healthcare profits. He would still be comfortable. His lifestyle might change, but he would never struggle like the Harpers. But his reputation? His standing in the business community? That might not survive. "Yes," he said finally. "I'm willing to sacrifice my reputation among people who value profit over human life. I'll find new allies. Better allies." The vote went forward. Jefferson retained control, but barely. The company was fractured. That night, Harper found him in the study again. "Bad day?" she asked. "Complicated day. Was it worth it?" Jefferson thought about Lily Harper, home now and healing. About David Harper, who had called to thank him with tears in his voice. About the hundreds of messages he had received from people sharing their stories, thanking him for speaking up. "Yes," he said. "Absolutely worth it." "Good." Harper handed him her laptop. "Because I want to show you something." It was a website, the Harper Fund. "I'm starting a nonprofit," Harper explained, "named after Lily. It's going to help families navigate medical debt, connect them with resources, advocate for policy change, and I'm using my college fund to capitalize it." "Harper, no. Dad, I can go to college later, or go to a state school, or work while I study. I have options that people like Lily don't have. This is more important." Jefferson looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw someone he had helped create but who had become her own person. Someone better than he had been. "Okay," he said. "But I'm matching whatever you put in. 10-1. Harper grinned. "Deal." They shook on it, father and daughter, forming a partnership that would outlast buildings and business ventures. A partnership built not on wealth, but on justice. Lily Harper stood at the front of Jefferson Elementary School, holding her report card. All A's. She had missed 2 weeks of school for the surgery and recovery, but she had caught up. More than caught up, she had thrived. "Proud of you, sweetheart," David said, hugging her. He was in his new work uniform. FedEx had promoted him to a supervisory position after he had completed a management training program they had paid for. Full-time with benefits had turned into a real career path. "Miss Olivia," Lily called out, spotting her favorite person in the crowd of parents. "Look, all A's." Olivia rushed over, her face beaming. "I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you, baby girl." Olivia's candle business had taken off in the past 6 months. After the story broke about her paying for Lily's CT scan, orders had flooded in, people wanting to support the woman who had sacrificed everything for a neighbor's child. She had been able to hire 2 employees and move into a small commercial space. Nothing huge, but sustainable. Growing. "Harper's waiting for you," Olivia said to Lily. "She texted me. Something about celebrating?" Sure enough, a sleek black car was parked across the street, and Harper Cole emerged, waving. The friendship between the two girls had been unexpected but genuine. Harper spent less time at country clubs now, and more time in South Memphis, tutoring kids at the community center, learning what real life looked like for most people. She had deferred college for a year to work on the Harper Fund full-time. In 6 months, they had helped over 300 families navigate medical debt, connected them with resources, and successfully lobbied for new state-level protections against medical bankruptcies. "Lily," Harper called. "We're going for ice cream. Your dad said it's okay." Lily ran to her, the 2 girls hugging. David watched them, still marveling at this unlikely friendship that had emerged from tragedy. "Mr. Harper," Harper waved him over. "Come on, you too. Dad's meeting us there." At the ice cream shop, a local place, not fancy, Jefferson Cole sat in a booth, looking slightly out of place but trying. He had learned to be comfortable in uncomfortable spaces, to listen more than he spoke, to recognize that his perspective wasn't the only one that mattered. "All A's," Jefferson said when Lily showed him her report card. "That deserves a hot fudge sundae at minimum." They ordered simple pleasures that tasted sweeter because they were shared across the divide that used to separate them. "How's the legislative push going?" David asked Jefferson. Slow, but moving. We've got bipartisan support for the medical debt relief bill. Should pass next session. And the universal health care proposal? Jefferson grimaced. That's a longer fight. Decades probably. But we're laying groundwork. Changing hearts and minds one conversation at a time. It's more than anyone was doing 6 months ago, Olivia pointed out. Thanks to David, Jefferson said. If he hadn't confronted me that night. If you hadn't listened, David interrupted. Plenty of rich people get confronted and just call security. You actually heard me. I had a good teacher. Jefferson glanced at Harper. My daughter reminded me what my wife always said, that privilege is only valuable if you use it to help others. I had forgotten that. Lost my way in spreadsheets and quarterly earnings. You found your way back, Harper said simply. That's what matters. They ate their ice cream. This unlikely group bound together by crisis and transformation. Two families from different worlds who had collided and decided to build something new instead of retreating to their separate corners. Lily, finishing her sundae, suddenly said, I want to be a doctor now, not a teacher. Everyone looked at her. A teacher is still good, she explained. But I want to be a doctor so I can help kids like me. Kids whose families can't afford to be sick. That's a wonderful goal, Jefferson said gently. But medical school is expensive. The Harper Fund is setting up scholarships, Harper interrupted, for kids from low-income families who want to go into healthcare. Lily will be our first recipient. Already decided. Lily's eyes went wide. Really? Really? You're going to be a doctor, Lily Harper, and you're going to change the world. Lily grinned. That same radiant smile she'd had the day she finished her exams, the day everything changed. David felt tears prickling his eyes. 6 months ago, he had been drowning. Now his daughter was dreaming about medical school, and those dreams were actually possible. Thank you, he said quietly to Jefferson and Harper. For everything. Don't thank us, Jefferson said. You saved us as much as we saved you. You reminded us what wealth is actually for, what life is actually for. Later that evening, after the celebration, David stood in his apartment, the same apartment, but it felt different now. The stress that had soaked into the walls had lifted. The fear that had been his constant companion had eased. His kids were asleep, Emma, Noah, and Lily, all healthy, all safe, all with futures that looked brighter than he had dared hope 6 months ago. He thought about his wife, gone 3 years now. Wondered what she would think of everything that had happened. She would be proud, he decided. Proud of Lily's strength, proud of David for speaking up, proud of the changes rippling out from one moment of desperate courage. His phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. PBS documentary crew wants to interview us about healthcare reform and the Cole story. You interested? David smiled. 6 months ago, he had been invisible. Now people wanted to hear his story, not because his story was special. Millions of people had similar stories of medical debt and struggle, but because his story had sparked something, had opened eyes that had been deliberately closed. He texted back, yes. If it helps more people, yes. Because that was the point, wasn't it? Not personal salvation, but systemic change. Not one family saved, but thousands, millions. The work was far from over. America's healthcare system was still broken. Medical bankruptcies still happened every day. People still died because they couldn't afford care. But the conversation had changed. The movement had started. And it started because one desperate father refused to accept that his daughter's life should cost more than he could ever pay. 1 year later. The Cole Foundation Gala looked different this year. For one thing, half the attendees were not wealthy. Jefferson had insisted if they were going to raise money for healthcare, then the people affected by healthcare costs should be in the room. David Harper sat at a table with his family, wearing a suit that Harper had helped him pick out. He still felt out of place, but less so than last year. Lily, now 12, wore the lavender dress Olivia had given her, altered to fit her growing frame. She sat between Harper and Emma, chattering excitedly. The ballroom was decorated beautifully, but the tone was different. Less champagne, more substance. The speakers weren't just wealthy donors, they were patients, families, healthcare workers who had seen the system's failures firsthand. Jefferson took the stage, and the room quieted. Last year at this gala, he began. A man crashed this event and changed my life. David Harper told me the truth about our healthcare system, that it bankrupts families, that it forces impossible choices, that it values profit over people. And he was right. Jefferson gestured to David, who stood reluctantly as the room applauded. In the year since that night, Cole Industries has forgiven over $47 million in medical debt. We've helped 2,300 families avoid bankruptcy. We've lobbied for legislative change and seen 3 states pass medical debt protection laws. The Harper Fund has assisted over 1,000 families and is expanding nationally. More applause. But, Jefferson continued, and the room quieted again, it's not enough. These are band-aids on a broken system. Individual charity cannot fix structural injustice. We need universal healthcare coverage. We need to join every other developed nation in recognizing that healthcare is a human right, not a commodity. Some uncomfortable shifting in the audience, not everyone agreed, especially among the older wealthy donors. I know some of you think that's radical, Jefferson said. You think it's socialist or unrealistic or bad for business. But let me tell you what's truly radical, letting people die because they're poor, forcing families to choose between medicine and food, bankrupting people for having the audacity to get sick. That's radical. That's cruel. And we can do better. He paused, looking around the room. Tonight, we're not just raising money for a hospital wing. We're launching the National Healthcare Reform Coalition, a group of healthcare executives, patient advocates, and policy experts committed to pushing for universal coverage. We're going to use our wealth, our influence, our connections, everything we have to fix this broken system. The applause was mixed, now enthusiastic from some, polite from others, resistant from a few who sat stone-faced. But Jefferson didn't care. He had learned that doing what's right often meant making people uncomfortable. After his speech, David approached the stage. That was good, David said. Really good. Think it'll work? Eventually. Not fast enough for all the people suffering now, but eventually. Jefferson nodded. Will you speak? They need to hear from you, not just me. David hesitated. I'm not good at speeches. You don't need to be. Just tell the truth. That's what changed everything last year. So David took the microphone, his hands shaking slightly. Hi, he started awkwardly. I'm David Harper. A year ago, I crashed this event and yelled at Mr. Cole. I was angry and desperate and scared. My daughter was upstairs recovering from surgery I couldn't afford. I felt helpless. He looked out at the crowd, the wealthy and the working class mixed together, united by the topic of healthcare. I'm not helpless anymore. Mr. Cole paid our bills, got me a better job, opened doors I didn't know existed. And I'm grateful, I'll always be grateful. But here's the thing, I shouldn't have to be grateful. No one should have to depend on a billionaire's charity to keep their kid alive. That's not a system, that's a lottery. And most people don't win. Some nods in the audience. My daughter wants to be a doctor now. She wants to help other kids like her. And because of the Harper Fund scholarship, she'll be able to do that. But what about all the other kids? The ones who won't meet a Harper Cole at a hospital? The ones whose parents can't crash a gala and get a billionaire's attention? They deserve the same chance. They deserve health care that doesn't bankrupt them. They deserve a system that works. David's voice grew stronger, more confident. We're the richest country in the world. We can afford this. We just have to decide that people's lives matter more than profits. That health is a right, not a privilege. That's it. That's the whole thing. He stepped back from the microphone, and the applause was thunderous, real, emotional, from people who had lived similar stories or were finally understanding them. As David returned to his seat, Lily hugged him tight. I'm proud of you, Papa, she whispered. I'm proud of you, baby girl. Across the table, Harper was crying happy tears this time. She had spent the year working herself to exhaustion for the Harper Fund, driven by the memory of meeting Lily in that hospital room, driven by the recognition of her own privilege and the responsibility that came with it. You did good, Olivia said to David, squeezing his hand. We all did, David corrected. This isn't one person's story. It's all of ours. And he was right. Because change doesn't happen because one person acts. It happens when one person acts and others join them. When stories are shared and heard. When people decide that the way things are isn't the way things have to be. Lily Harper stood on the steps of Jefferson Medical School, renamed in a moment of institutional reform, to honor a healthcare worker who had died fighting for patients' rights, not the industrialist who had profited from their suffering. She was 18 now, starting her undergraduate pre-med program. The Harper Fund scholarship covered everything: tuition, books, housing, living expenses. She wouldn't graduate with the crippling debt that had trapped previous generations of students from poor families. "Ready?" Harper Cole asked, standing beside her. Harper had finished her degree in public policy and was now running the Harper Fund full-time. It had grown from a small nonprofit to a national organization with chapters in 30 states. "Ready," Lily confirmed. "You?" Harper was starting a graduate program in healthcare administration. "Let's change the world," she said with a grin. The two young women who had met because of a medical emergency and become sisters by choice headed toward their respective orientations. Behind them, David watched with tears in his eyes. 5 years ago, he had been a janitor barely scraping by, watching his daughter nearly die because he couldn't afford her care. Now he was a facilities manager at FedEx Corporate with a good salary and full benefits. His other children were thriving. He had bought a small house, nothing fancy, but theirs. Olivia stood beside him, her hand in his. They had gotten married 2 years ago in a simple ceremony that brought together two communities that had learned to see each other as family, not strangers. Her business had grown too, 3 locations now, employing 15 people, all at living wages with health benefit. She had learned from Jefferson's transformation that business success and ethical treatment of workers weren't mutually exclusive. "She's going to be amazing," Olivia said, watching Lily disappear into the building. "She already is," David replied. Jefferson Cole approached them, walking with a slight limp now. He'd had a health scare himself last year, a reminder that wealth doesn't make anyone immune to mortality. But he had recovered, and the experience had only deepened his commitment to healthcare reform. "Big day," Jefferson said, smiling. "Thank you," David said, as he had said countless times over the past 5 years, "for all of this." "Stop thanking me. You saved my soul. I just wrote some checks." It was more than checks, and they all knew it. Jefferson had spent 5 years fighting his own class, alienating former friends, sacrificing business opportunities, all to push for systemic change. The National Healthcare Reform Coalition he had founded had grown to include 50 major corporations, hundreds of healthcare executives, and thousands of patient advocates. They had successfully lobbied for medical debt forgiveness programs in 40 states, expanded Medicaid coverage, price transparency requirements, caps on drug costs, protection from surprise billing, and they were still pushing for the big goal: universal health care coverage. 3 presidential candidates had made it a central platform. Polls showed majority support. The tide was turning. Slowly. Too slowly for the people still suffering, but turning. "How's the documentary doing?" Jefferson asked. The PBS documentary about their story, After the Last Exam, How One Family Changed American Healthcare, had premiered last month to strong ratings and critical acclaim. It was required viewing in medical schools now, and had sparked renewed national conversation about healthcare reform. "Olivia's gotten 300 interview requests," David said. "We're trying to be selective." "Good. Tell the story, but don't let it consume you. Live your life." That's what this was all for. Sound advice from a man who had learned it the hard way. They stood together, watching students stream into the building, future doctors, nurses, healthcare administrators, some from wealthy families, but increasingly many from working-class backgrounds, enabled by scholarships like the one Lily received. The system was changing. Not fast enough, never fast enough, but changing. Inside the building, Lily found her orientation room and took a seat. Other students filed in, all nervous, all excited, all here because they wanted to help people. The orientation leader, a 4th-year medical student, took the podium. "Welcome to Jefferson Medical School," she began. "You're here because you want to be healers. That's noble. But I want you to remember something as you go through this program. Healthcare is not just about treating disease. It's about justice." Lily sat up straighter, listening intently. "Some of you come from families where medical school is expected, where the cost is no barrier, where becoming a doctor is just the next step. Others come from families where you're the first to attend college, where this opportunity seemed impossible until recently. Both paths are valid, but remember, your future patients will come from all backgrounds. They'll be rich and poor, insured and uninsured, citizens and immigrants, and they all deserve the same quality of care." The speaker paused, looking around the room. This school is named after Dr. Patricia Jefferson, who died 20 years ago fighting hospital administrators who wanted to refuse care to uninsured patients. She believed healthcare was a right. She lost her job for that belief, but she never stopped fighting. Lily felt chills. This was why she was here. As you go through this program, you'll be taught medicine. But I'm asking you to also learn justice, to question systems that create health inequity, to advocate for your patients, especially those who can't advocate for themselves. To remember that being a doctor is not just about knowledge, it's about using that knowledge in service of humanity. After orientation, Lily walked across campus, processing everything. Her phone buzzed a text from her dad. "How was it?" She replied, "Perfect, exactly where I'm supposed to be." And she meant it. 5 years ago, she had been an 11-year-old girl whose appendix nearly killed her, whose family nearly drowned in medical debt. Now, she was on the path to becoming the kind of doctor who would make sure other kids didn't face the same crisis. That night, the Harper and Cole families gathered for dinner at David and Olivia's house, a tradition they had established years ago. Weekly dinners where two families who had started in such different places came together as one. Emma was 16 now, excelling in school, dreaming of becoming a civil rights lawyer. Noah was 11, funny and kind, with his big sister's resilience. They ate spaghetti and garlic bread, simple food, but prepared with love. They laughed and told stories and made plans for the future. "Did you hear?" Jefferson said. "Senator Williams is introducing the Universal Health Care Act next month. She thinks they might have the votes." "Really?" David leaned forward, interested. "Really, 5 years of work, thousands of voices, millions of stories, it's all coming together." "Will it pass?" Olivia asked. "Maybe not on the first vote, but eventually. The momentum is there. People are tired of the old way." After dinner, David and Jefferson stood on the back porch, looking at the Memphis skyline. "You ever think about that night?" David asked. "The gala?" "All the time," Jefferson admitted. "It was the scariest and best thing that ever happened to me. Scary because you stripped away all my comfortable delusions. Best because you gave me purpose. I just yelled at you because I was desperate. You told me the truth because you were desperate. There's a difference." They stood in comfortable silence, two men who had become genuine friends despite or because of their vastly different origins. "What happens if the healthcare bill doesn't pass?" David asked. "We keep fighting. This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Maybe longer. But every person we help, every mind we change, every story we tell, that's progress. Even if the big legislative victory doesn't come in our lifetime, we're laying groundwork for the generation after us." Lily's generation. Exactly. Lily and Harper and all the kids who'll grow up in a world where we normalize the idea that healthcare is a right. They'll finish what we started. David nodded, satisfied with that answer. He had learned patience these past 5 years, learned that change was slow but possible, learned that one voice could become a chorus if you were brave enough to use it. 20 years later, Dr. Lily Harper walked through the halls of Harper Memorial Hospital, funded by the Harper Fund and built in South Memphis to serve the community she had grown up in. She was 31 now, a pediatric surgeon specializing in emergency cases. The kind of doctor who saved kids like she had once been. The hospital operated on a sliding scale fee structure. Nobody was turned away. Nobody was bankrupted. It was possible because of the Universal Health Care Act that had finally passed 15 years ago, after a decade of fighting and compromise and incremental progress. America had joined the rest of the developed world in guaranteeing healthcare as a right. It wasn't perfect, no system was. But it was better, dramatically better. Medical bankruptcies had dropped by 90%. People sought care early instead of waiting until crisis. Preventive care had improved population health. Life expectancy was rising, especially among the poor. The change hadn't come easily. There had been fierce resistance, bitter political battles, economic disruptions. But they had persisted. And now, a whole generation was growing up not knowing the terror of choosing between health and financial survival. Lily's phone buzzed her partner Harper, texting from her office at the Department of Health and Human Services. Harper had been appointed Secretary of HHS 3 years ago, the culmination of decades of advocacy work. "Dinner tonight? Dad wants to celebrate his birthday." Lily smiled, texting back, "Absolutely. I'll bring the kids." She had twins now, Maya and David, named after her mother and father. 5 years old, healthy, covered by the universal healthcare system that would protect them their whole lives. Her father, David, was retired now, living comfortably on his pension and Social Security. Olivia still ran her business, though she had turned over day-to-day operations to Emma, who had proven to be a brilliant manager. Emma was a civil rights lawyer, as she had dreamed. Noah was a teacher, following the path their mother had started. The Harper siblings had all found ways to serve, to give back, to make the world better. Jefferson Cole had passed away 2 years ago at 72. Not from lack of care, he'd had the best treatment available, but from old age, peacefully, surrounded by family. At his funeral, thousands had attended. Not just the wealthy, but the families he had helped, the advocates he had funded, the people whose lives had been changed by his transformation from profit-focused businessman to justice-focused philanthropist. His eulogy had been delivered jointly by Harper and David, two people from different worlds, bound together by the choice Jefferson had made 20 years ago to listen instead of dismissing, to change instead of defending the status quo. Tonight's dinner would be bittersweet, celebrating what would have been Jefferson's 74th birthday, honoring his memory, continuing his work. Lily finished her rounds and headed home, driving through South Memphis. The neighborhood had changed too, not gentrified, but revitalized. New businesses, better schools, safer streets, investment without displacement. It was possible when people cared more about communities than profit margins. At David and Olivia's house, the same house they had bought 20 years ago, now paid off and filled with memories the family gathered. Everyone was there. David and Olivia, now in their 60s and still deeply in love. Emma with her wife and their daughter. Noah with his husband and their son. Lily with her partner and the twins. And Harper, carrying a photo of Jefferson. To Dad, Harper said, raising her glass, who learned that wealth means nothing if you don't use it to make the world more just. To Jefferson, everyone echoed, glasses clinking. They ate and laughed and told stories. The twins played with their cousins. 3 generations of family, bound not by blood but by choice, by shared struggle, by the decision to see each other's humanity. Later, after the kids were in bed and the adults sat on the porch with coffee, David said quietly, "You ever think about how different things could have been?" "All the time," Harper replied. "If you hadn't crashed that gala, if Dad hadn't listened, if Lily hadn't survived, if your neighbor hadn't paid for my CT scan," Lily added, squeezing Olivia's hand. "If the nurse hadn't given Papa that visitor badge." So many ifs, Emma mused. Any one of them goes differently, and none of this happens. But they all happen, Noah pointed out, because people chose courage over comfort, justice over convenience. David looked at the family around him, this beautiful, unlikely family built from tragedy and transformation, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. 20 years ago, he had been a desperate father watching his daughter nearly die, helpless against a system designed to crush people like him. Now, that daughter was a doctor saving other kids. The system had changed not completely, never completely, but meaningfully. And 2 families who had started worlds apart had become one. "What are you thinking about?" Olivia asked, seeing the emotion on his face. "Just everything. How far we've come. How much has changed. Because of you," Harper said. "You started all of this." "No," David corrected gently. "Lily started it. By getting sick, by surviving, by being brave enough to keep dreaming even when everything looked hopeless. I just made sure people knew her story." Lily, overhearing, came over and hugged her father. "We all started it," she said, "together, and we're still going." Because that was the truth. Change wasn't one person's work. It was collective. It was messy and slow and frustrating and beautiful. It was people choosing to see each other, to listen, to fight for a world where everyone had what they needed to thrive. It was, in the end, about love. Love for a daughter drove David to confront a billionaire. Love for humanity drove Jefferson to transform his life's work. Love for justice drove Harper to spend her life fighting for systemic change. Love for her family and community drove Lily to become a doctor who served the people others ignored. Love for each other created a family from strangers. And love's stubborn, persistent, revolutionary love was slowly, steadily changing the world. The end. But really, it's not the end. It's just the beginning of all the stories we haven't told yet. All the people who'll be helped by systems that were changed, All the kids who'll grow up in a world that's a little more just. All the families who won't have to choose between health and survival. After the last exam, Lily Harper lived. And because she lived, thousands of others would live too. That's how change works. One life, one choice, one moment of courage at a time. Throughout the narrative, readers witnessed how one family's crisis exposed systemic failures that affected millions. David Harper could have stayed silent, most people do. They accept the bills, the debt, the crushing weight of a system that profits from suffering. But he didn't. He spoke up, and his voice became a chorus. Right now, families just like the Harpers are sitting in emergency rooms, signing forms for care they can't afford, choosing between medicine and food, between treatment and rent. Right now, talented kids like Lily are giving up on dreams of becoming doctors because the path seems impossible when you're poor. Right now, the system continues unchanged unless people like you decide it shouldn't. You don't have to crash a gala. You don't have to confront a billionaire, but you can. Share stories of medical debt and healthcare struggles. Support organizations fighting for healthcare reform. Vote for candidates who prioritize universal coverage. Advocate for patients' rights in your community. Refuse to accept that suffering is the price of healthcare. Every movement starts with people who refuse to accept the way things are. Will you be one of them? Call to action, end of story, direct guilt framed. You just read the story about a little girl who almost died because her father was poor. It took you maybe an hour to read this story. In that same hour, approximately 1,000 Americans received medical bills they can't afford. 50 families filed for bankruptcy due to healthcare costs. 3 people died because they delayed seeking care due to cost. These aren't characters. They're real people, real families, real suffering. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you have health insurance, if you can afford to see a doctor when you're sick, if you've never had to choose between medication and groceries, then you have privilege that millions of Americans don't have. What are you going to do with that privilege? You could close this story and move on with your life. Most people will. They'll feel sad for a moment, maybe share it, but nothing in their life will actually change. Or you could be like Jefferson Cole, someone who heard the truth and let it transform them. You don't need to be a billionaire to make a difference. You just need to care enough to act. Here's what you can do right now. Share this story. Not because it's entertaining, but because someone needs to hear it. Maybe it's someone drowning in medical debt who needs to know they're not alone. Maybe it's someone with privilege who needs to wake up. Support healthcare reform. Contact your representatives. Vote for universal coverage. Push your employer to offer better benefits. Join advocacy groups. Don't just agree that things should change, actually work for change. Help someone directly. Medical debt is crowdfunding's biggest category. Right now, there are GoFundMe campaigns for people who can't afford their cancer treatment, their kids' surgery, their insulin. Find one. Help one family. Be someone's Olivia. Check your own assumptions. How many times have you judged someone for being poor? For not having insurance? For making choices you didn't understand? How many times have you been grateful for your privilege without actually doing anything with it? Don't stay silent. When you hear people say, we can't afford universal health care, remind them we're the richest country in the world. When they say people just need to work harder, remind them David worked multiple jobs and still couldn't afford his daughter's surgery. When they say that's just how it is, remind them it doesn't have to be. The system that nearly killed Lily still exists. It's killing people right now, and it continues because most people with the power to change it are comfortable enough not to care. Are you comfortable enough not to care? Or will you be someone who refuses to accept that healthcare should cost a child's life or a family's future? The story you just listened to happened because one desperate father spoke up and one privileged man listened. What's your role in the next chapter? Subscribe, like, and share so others will learn from this story.